Most people imagine medieval travellers shivering beside weak little flames, endlessly tossing on sticks just to stay alive. Truth is, many of them carried a fire strategy so efficient it could burn through the night with almost no attention. Not magic, not myth, just raw survival science passed down through practice, patience and necessity. And once you understand how it worked, you'll realize this wasn't primitive at all. It was engineered simplicity at its finest. The secret wasn't bigger flames. The modern instinct says more wood equals more heat. Medieval travellers knew better. They weren't trying to build tall fires. They were trying to build slow ones. Flames waste energy. Embers store it. The goal wasn't spectacle. It was endurance. So instead of stacking loose wood that burned fast and flashy, travellers built compact, controlled fire beds designed to choke the burn rate down to a crawl. They arranged fuel so oxygen fed the coals slowly rather than letting the fire roar. Less air meant slower combustion. Slower combustion meant longer heat. So, this is the difference between a bonfire and a survival fire. One dazzles, grabs your attention with its bright flames. The other, well, it lasts, burning steady and low, giving you warmth when you really need it. Now then, let's talk about the long burn method. It's all about making your fire last through the night, without needing to fuss over it every hour. By choosing the right wood and arranging it carefully, you can keep a steady heat going for hours on end. It's a simple trick, but one that makes all the difference when you're out there relying on what you can build with your own two hands. A common medieval trick involved laying thick logs parallel to each other with a narrow gap between them. Embers sat in that gap like a glowing spine. Once lit, the logs slowly fed the heat inward instead of burning outward. It turned the fire into a self-regulating system. Really clever, if you ask me. Because the wood surfaces touched or nearly touched, airflow was restricted. That slowed the burn dramatically. The heat radiated inward, drying and preheating the logs before they caught fully. This meant the fire could smoulder for hours before needing any adjustment. In some regions, travellers even buried part of the fire under ash or soil. This sounds counterintuitive, but it insulated the coals, trapping heat while reducing oxygen. The result was a controlled, steady release of warmth instead of a quick blaze. That's how a fire could last 12 hours on what looked like almost nothing. Now, when it comes to choosing your fuel, well, not all wood is created equal. Hardwoods, like oak or ash, burn longer and hotter, while softwoods tend to burn up quickly and can be a bit smoky. Folks learned, often through trial and error, to pick the right materials for the job. Understanding the science behind how different woods burn made all the difference in keeping a fire going through the night. It's a bit of old wisdom that stood the test of time, really. Fuel choice made all the difference. Not all wood behaves the same, Medieval travellers didn't just grab whatever was nearby. They looked for dense hardwood when possible. Dense wood burns slower because its fibres are tightly packed. More mass means more stored energy. Softwood burns hot but fast. Hardwood burns steady and patient. When hardwood wasn't available, they compensated by using larger pieces rather than splitting everything into kindling. Big chunks burn slower because their surface area is smaller relative to their mass. They also relied heavily on partially dried wood rather than perfectly seasoned timber. Slight moisture content slows combustion without extinguishing it. That subtle dampness forces the fire to spend energy drying the wood first, stretching the burn time. This wasn't guesswork. It was field-tested knowledge. So, let's talk about something that often gets overlooked: ash, and where you put it. In medieval times, folks learned pretty quickly that ash wasn't just waste from the fire. It actually played a really important role in keeping things warm and safe overnight. One of the most underrated survival tools in medieval travel wasn't the flame itself. It was the ash. Ash acts like a thermal blanket. It traps heat while restricting airflow. Travellers would often rake ash over coals before sleeping. To an outsider, it looked like the fire was dying. In reality, it was entering a low-power mode. Under that ash layer, embers stayed hot for hours, sometimes for an entire night. In the morning, a quick breath of air or a small twig could wake the fire instantly. This technique saved fuel, saved effort, and, well, saved lives. Fire placement mattered just as much as fuel. Medieval travellers rarely built fires in the open unless, they were forced to. Wind accelerates combustion, and exposure just wastes heat. Instead, they looked for natural windbreaks like rocks, shallow pits, or the lee side of a slope. Sometimes they dug small trenches or shallow bowls in the earth. This contained the fire, shielded it from wind, and reflected heat back inward. The ground itself became part of the system, absorbing warmth during peak burn and releasing it slowly through the night. This wasn't just about warmth, you see. It was about efficiency. There's a deeper truth here, really. Building a fire in the wild wasn't just about survival. It was about understanding the land and working with it, not against it. Each decision, from where to place the fire to how to shape the earth, reflected a kind of quiet wisdom passed down over generations. It's a reminder that sometimes the simplest choices are the most profound. Why the system worked so well, you might wonder. A 12-hour medieval fire wasn't really about feeding it constantly. It was, honestly, about designing it correctly from the start. Every element just worked together. Dense fuel, limited airflow, insulating ash, protective placement, and a controlled structure. Modern camping culture, often focuses on starting fires fast. But medieval survival, that focused on maintaining them smart. And here's the deeper truth. These methods weren't rare tricks only known by specialists. They were everyday knowledge for folks who depended on fire the way we depend on electricity now. When your safety depends on heat, you learn to master it. So, what does this tell us about medieval survival? We often label past technologies as crude, just because they lack metal parts or modern engineering. But medieval travellers, they operated with something just as powerful: generational experience. They didn't need gadgets. They understood materials, they understood airflow, and they understood heat transfer long before those concepts even had scientific names. Well, there we have it, folks. We've come quite a long way together, haven't we? I do hope this journey has given you a bit of insight and perhaps even inspired you to take your own next steps. If you found any of this helpful, or, if it just made you think, please do consider sharing it with others who might benefit as well. And of course, don't forget to stay curious and keep exploring. There's always more to discover. Thank you ever so much for joining me today. What looks primitive today was actually optimized for real-world conditions. No wasted effort, no wasted fuel, just intelligent design built from observation and repetition. And in many ways, these techniques outperform modern casual fire-building methods. Why this knowledge still matters today. Power outages happen, storms happen, people still get stranded outdoors. Knowing how to build a long-burning fire isn't just historical trivia, it's practical survival knowledge. Even for campers or hikers, this medieval approach saves wood, reduces effort, and keeps heat steady through the night without constant attention. Sometimes the best innovations aren't new. They're rediscovered. Final thoughts for the Ancient Roots Uncovered community. History isn't just stories, it's solutions. The medieval long-burn fire proves that human ingenuity didn't start with modern technology. It thrived long before it. If this deep dive into forgotten survival wisdom lit a spark for you, make sure you subscribe to Ancient Roots Uncovered and share this with someone who loves hidden history. The past still has lessons waiting in the embers.